Muy buenas a todos, en este vídeo os voy a contar cómo aprender español de una manera más rápida y inteligente. Y entonces, empecemos. And if you're new to the channel, what's up everyone, my name's Ian, I'm an American polyglot that's been learning languages for the better part of a decade, and now I make videos here on YouTube about learning languages and just other nerdy language stuff. And like I said in the beginning of this video, today we're going to talk about how you can start to learn Spanish faster and smarter. This is a video I've wanted to make for a while, mainly because I get a lot of questions about how it is that I learn Spanish and what are the best ways that you can learn Spanish. And honestly, after hearing and seeing how those around me learn Spanish, I realized that not everybody learns Spanish in a way that is effective. Or maybe just some people want to learn Spanish in a way that's new because whatever they were doing before hasn't really worked out for them. And so, let's get into it. Okay, so first and foremost, the key to learning Spanish faster and smarter is above all having a plan of attack. Because putting stickers on household items in Spanish or changing the language on your phone to Spanish will only get you so far. And if you ask me, and since this is my video, I would say that that plan of attack should revolve around the core of the language, which is the grammar, and in particular, the tenses. The tenses are very important, especially in Spanish, where there are, like 16 of them? So it's pretty important to know Spanish tenses if you're gonna speak Spanish fluently. But you can't just tackle all 16 right off the bat, because that's just too much, especially if you're just starting out. And so I recommend beginning with the present tense, the future tense, and the preterite, which is one of the more common past tenses in Spanish. This will enable you to have basic conversations and make basic sentences and express yourself in the most basic way possible, but still be able to communicate with people. And this can be really difficult at first, but the best way to do this is to begin with simple conjugations. Find verbs in Spanish, simple ones that you use every day in day-to-day language, such as correr, hacer, jugar, verbs that are common, and then just create a conjugation table. In Spanish, there are two types of verb conjugations. There are ER and IR verbs, and there are AR verbs. That's more or less how they can all be split up. Taking these verbs and creating conjugation charts in the present, the future, and the past will help you do this a lot faster. And as you progress and you continue to do the things that I'm going to list later on in this video, then you can begin to add more and more tenses to the list. You can go into the conditional, you can go into the subjunctive, you can go into the imperfect, and the list just grows. And over time, you'll be able to master all the tenses in Spanish, and you will be able to speak fluently and like a native. And this is because grammar is the core of a language. If you put stickers around the house on different objects and translate them to Spanish, or if you just look at your phone settings in Spanish, great, you might know how to say these things in Spanish in a best case scenario, but you're not really going to do yourself a favor. You're not going to be able to speak, you're not going to be able to converse, and above all, you probably won't be able to understand anything. And so, it's very important that you tackle the grammar. And next in our plan of attack is learning articles and object pronouns. These two things are very important in Spanish, but luckily, they're also very simple. Object pronouns in Spanish are words such as te, le, la, lo, nos, vos, les, me, etc. And articles in Spanish are words such as un, una, el, la, las, etc. Learning object pronouns and articles will allow you to make your sentences just so much more complex, and not to mention there's just so many of them in Spanish. And luckily, article usage in Spanish mimics article usage in English. And so for those of you watching this video that can understand everything that I'm saying now, well, luckily, you won't have much of a problem learning articles in Spanish. And when it comes to determining masculine and feminine, something which doesn't exist in English but is very prominent in Spanish, that's also pretty simple to learn because there's tricks for doing so. Tricks such as most words that end in dad and theon are usually feminine, and words that end in an O will usually be masculine. Now that's just a simplification. There's many other similar rules, but they're relatively simple to learn. And now next in our plan of attack is to immerse yourself in Spanish. Immersion is the key to learning any language. I don't think I could have learned any of the languages that I speak today if I hadn't at least partially immersed myself in the language. And for Spanish, this means listening to Spanish music, listening to Spanish podcasts, watching movies in Spanish, just getting accustomed to hearing the language and reading the language and just being surrounded by the language in different settings. Now, of course, if you're a beginner, this can sound very daunting and very difficult, but you can always begin by watching movies in Spanish with English subtitles, because that way you're at least hearing the language, and then you can read what it means. And over time, you'll begin to pick things up. You'll begin to pick up the meanings of words, and you'll begin to pick up on how certain phrases are used. And as you progress and you start to become more advanced, or for those of you that are already advanced in Spanish, you can listen to Spanish YouTubers, Spanish comedy skits and comedy shows. Or you can go on Discord or other online spaces where you can actually try your hand at speaking the language. And this doesn't even have to be something you do all the time or for hours on end. Me, for example, when I'm stuck in traffic, I'll listen to a Spanish podcast or listen to some Spanish comedy. When I'm cooking dinner, I'll listen to some Spanish music. Or when I am just sitting around in my room doing nothing, I'll go on Discord and I'll try to speak to people in Spanish. And just by doing this, here and there throughout the week, throughout the month, throughout the year, I can notice a big difference in my Spanish and in my progression in other languages. And it may be very difficult and frustrating at first, and it may even make you embarrassed and want to give up, especially when you find you can't understand somebody or somebody can't understand you. But this is when you persevere, and that is what makes the biggest difference. And I'm guilty of it too. I've felt embarrassed many times while trying to speak in other languages of mine when people couldn't understand me or I couldn't put a sentence together. And I would just let it go, but then I'd pick it back up and make progress again. So it's totally normal. But the goal is immerse yourself. And next in our plan of attack is filling up your vocabulary. And I would personally start off with the 100 most used verbs and nouns in a language because they're just so common and you'll probably have more use for them day to day than most other words. And this is also where putting stickers on things or changing the language on your phone can actually be handy for some people. And luckily, most words in Spanish are direct cognates of words in English. And so you'll find that you can recognize a lot of common words and verbs in Spanish just because you speak English already. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a hypocrite, because in the beginning of this video, I did say that putting stickers on things or changing the language of your phone is only going to get you so far. And that's true if that's all you do or if that's how you begin. This is something that you should start to do when you've already mastered the core of a language. At that point, you already know how sentences are built. You already know conjugations and tenses. And now you add in the words and you've got the ability to create sentences of your own and communicate on your own. A lot of these steps are very rinse and repeat, and you don't have to get it right on your first try. Like I said earlier, I myself failed a lot and then I gave up a lot, but then I always picked things back up and I was able to make more progress than I did the first time. And that's all it really is. It's just perseverance. And so, in recap, what do? When you begin learning Spanish, you need to have a plan of attack. And in my opinion, that plan of attack should be learning the core of the language, learning the bones, the structure, which is learning the tenses, starting with the future tense, the present tense, and the preterite. If possible, add more as time goes on. Secondly, learn object pronouns and articles. Learn the rules that govern them and when to use each one. Next, getting to practice. Listen to Spanish music, listen to Spanish podcasts, listen to Spanish comedy, and try to speak to people in Spanish whenever you can. Immersion, that's the name of the game. Just like kids learn languages faster because they're immersed in them, you should immerse yourself. And then finally, once you know the structure and the core of the language, and you've begun finding ways to practice the language, begin adding words. Once you follow this plan of attack and master these 4 things, and you rinse and repeat over and over again, however long it takes some people longer than others, but however long it takes, you will see results, and you will see that you can now speak Spanish. Learning Spanish isn't something that you can do overnight, but it is something that you can do smarter and thus faster. Don't do unnecessary work. Don't waste time on apps such as Duolingo. Don't change the language of your phone. Have a plan of attack, follow it, keep to it, and you will see results. All right, guys, that's all for this video. I just wanted to make this video because, like I said in the beginning of this video, I have a lot of people who ask me how I learn Spanish and what the best way to learn Spanish is. And honestly, Spanish, just like any other language, is like a code, and it's something that you can learn. But you can also waste a lot of time learning it if you don't know the right way to do it. If you like this video, and if this video helped you out, then leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave in the comments below any questions you may have or any thoughts that you may have after having seen this video, and I'll try to respond to them the best that I can. And share this video if you can, because that's what the algorithm likes, and so that's what helps me out the most. And if you'd like to see a video like this on any other language that I speak, or any other language in general, let me know, and I'll be sure to make a video at some point in the future. Y como siempre digo, al final de mis vídeos, nos vemos en el próximo vídeo. Hasta luego.